After studying this module, you shall be able to know the development experience under the 5-year plans, learn the experience under the first phase of planning, that is 1951 to 1990, identify the objectives achieved during this phase of planning and evaluate different plans in terms of the challenges and goals. Let us begin with the module with a small introduction of developmental planning in India. There is no account of Planning Commission in Indian Constitution. Therefore, it was constituted in the form of an advisory and specialized institution by means of a document of the government. Consequently, the government has been changing its nature and organization from time to time. In India, the 5-year plans have adopted different development strategies to achieve the twin objectives of rapid economic growth and distributive justice. Since India modeled its economic structure as a mixed economy, the government had to play a positive role in the economic activities. Further, the democratic political framework did not permit radical decision making in the production and distribution mechanism at any level. This was a major challenge for the strategy formulation. The state was supposed to play a vital role, and it was through the public sector that the state participated in the economic development. Thus, the development strategy was designed in accordance with the aspirations of an underdeveloped and a mixed economy. The development strategies have undergone changes over time to face the manifold issues and challenges. The first phase of planning refers to the period from 1951 to 1990. The 1990s heralded the onset of liberalization, privatization and globalization phase and shall be the second phase of planning in India. The first 5-year plan's main objective was to correct the imbalances created in the economy on account of the World War II, that is between 1937 and 1945, and the partition of the country in 1947. Another objective is to make the economy of the country so strong as to accelerate the pace of economic development, and for this constitute administrative and organizational setup necessary for enforcing the developmental programs. There was a major food crisis in the country as a fallout of partition, and thus the first 5-year plan decided to devote large amount of public sector investment towards agriculture and irrigation facilities. It is interesting to note that the achievement of this plan were more than its targets. The actual annual compound growth rate of national income was 3.6%, much higher than the targeted growth rate of 2.1%. The per capita income growth rate was 1.8% and incremental capital output ratio was 2.95 during this plan. The second 5-year plan was a turning point in the history of industrialization of India. The focus of the plans turned to the heavy and capital goods industries. The second 5-year planning model is also known as Mahalanobis model. The basic idea was that economic development has been generally associated with industrial expansion, as was evidently shown by the advanced Western countries. Thus, the fundamental objective of this plan was to initiate and accelerate the process of industrialization. The Mahalanobis model intended to rectify the imbalances in the industrial structure created during the years of British rule. The needs of huge investment required to support the heavy and capital good industries could only be met by the government, and thus the public sector was given the responsibility to steer the country on the path of industrialization. The Industrial Policy Revolution 1956 was based on the objective of establishing the socialistic pattern of society. It laid emphasis on industrialization, increased production of iron and steel, heavy chemicals including nitrogenous fertilizers, and development of heavy engineering and machine building industry. The Mahalanobis led to import substitution pattern of growth and an inward looking model of development where domestic production of goods to replace imports was intended. The objective of self-reliance and all-round development required not only huge investment but also formulation of policies which supported high quotas, tariffs, duties, that is protectionism. Thus, a well-protected and competition-free environment was designed to provide time and economies of cost to achieve productivity, efficiency, and also a place in the global market. During the second plan, the national income increased at the rate of 4.27% per annum, but per capita income growth rate was only 1.9% per annum. The reason for not achieving the 25% national income growth target was the adoption of hypothetical and much optimistic estimate for capital output ratio. Mahalanobis model gave this ratio as 2:1, but in practice it was estimated to be 3:40:1. During the second plan, 24% of the total outlay was mobilized as foreign assistance. This plan was severely hindered by the rising inflation rate in the economy. During this plan, price level increased by 30% against a decline of 13% during the first plan. The third 5-year plan also continued with the Mahalanobis model of achieving growth through industrialization. The basic aim of this plan was to push the economy up to the takeoff stage of development. It also aimed to attain self-sufficiency in food grains and to increase the agriculture production to suffice the requirement of export and industry. A target of 6% and 14% annual growth rate was fixed for food grains and industrial production respectively. But this plan could ensure only 2% annual growth rate in food grain production. The actual growth rate of per capita income was only 0.2% per annum. This plan was ill-fated plan as India faced 2 wars with China in 1962 and Pakistan in 1965. Besides, India also faced drought in 1965-66, which resulted into a decline of 4.7% in national income in 1966-67. Thus, the first 3 5-year plans saw the industrial sector growth at a high rate of 8 to 10% per annum. The industrial growth rate was substantial for a newly independent country which was devastated by years of colonial rule. This period saw the setting up of the huge steel plants, power plants, dams, heavy electricals and so on. The Mahalanobis model based planning definitely gave the country a high growth rate and rapid industrial development, but it fell short with regard to tackling the major problems of poverty, unemployment and inequality. It neglected the possibility of export-led growth. Further setbacks came in form of two consecutive droughts in 1966 and 1967 and the two wars in 1962 and 1965. The country faced severe challenges and subsequent fall in GDP growth rate. However, India learned a lesson out of these crises and realized the weaknesses in the existing development strategies, that is, the neglect of agriculture and also excessive dependence on foreign aid. Consequently, the strategy of planning was revised and greater stress on technological development in agriculture and also the need for self-reliance, that is, reducing dependence on foreign, was prioritized in the subsequent plans. However, due to the unfortunate failure of the third plan, the production in various sectors of the economy became stagnant. In 1966, the Government of India declared the devaluation of rupees with a view to increase the export of the country. However, favorable results could not be obtained. Under these circumstances, the fourth plan was postponed for some time and 3 annual plans were implemented during the period from 1966 to 1969. Some economists also refer this period as a period of plan holiday because no regular planning was done during this period. Fourth five-year plan started from 1969. This plan laid stress on the objective of self-reliance and also was the phase of green revolution, heralding a new chapter in the history of agriculture in India. This plan, that is 1969 to 1974, tried to consolidate the position on the food front and by laying the foundation of future export potentialities. During the fourth plan, the annual growth rate of national income was only 3.8%, which was much lower than the target. Food grains production could increase at a growth rate of 2.7% per annum. The annual growth rate in the industrial production was only 4% per annum, which again remained below the target. The fifth five-year plan, that is 1974 to 1979, was essentially a shift from earlier strategy of only growth to growth with social justice or growth with redistribution. The first three plans had focused on growth with the belief that the increase in growth rate would have a trickle-down effect, and in the long run, even the poorest of the poor would gain. However, nothing of this sort happened, even after so many years of planning. Thus, a need to re-strategize was the need of the hour. The eradication of poverty through various anti-poverty programs was launched to achieve the objective of poverty eradication. This plan also gave high priority to bringing inflation under control and to achieving stability in economic situation. The period of 1979 to 1980 was again a period of annual plans. The sixth plan was to start in 1979 but could not due to the fall of Janata government. The sixth plan was set up in 1980, and after the setting up of the new government by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the sixth plan continued with focus on poverty eradication. This plan was named as the rolling plan. The main objective of the sixth plan was to ensure sufficient growth in the rate of economic development, improvement in efficiency related to utilization of resources, and increase the production. The target growth rate for the sixth five-year plan was 5.2% per annum, but the actual attained growth rate was 5.3% per annum. In the food grains production, growth rate was 7%, but the actual growth rate was 5.5%. The increase in per capita income was nearly 3.1% per annum. The seventh plan, that is 1985 to 1990, was introduced after the country had enjoyed a GDP growth rate of 5.4% during the sixth plan. The seventh plan focus was on productivity enhancing measures and also on energy efficiency goals. The plan emphasized on policies and programs which would lead to an increase in food grains production, increased employment opportunities and productivity. There was a shift from massive investment in new industries to productivity and efficiency enhancing measures in the existing ones. Several projects emphasizing an energy requirement were taken up. Thus, the four key objectives of this plan were growth, modernization, self-reliance and social justice. The target growth rate for this plan was 5% per annum. However, during the plan period, the actual growth rate of national income was estimated to be 5.9%. The growth rate of per capita income was 3.7%. In some areas, the growth rates were lower than the targeted growth rates, but in the main areas, the absolute growth rate was satisfactory. Let us now assess the first phase of development planning in India. The first five plans could fulfill the objectives of a newly independent country which had to face the challenges of partition, the problem of refugees and the inadequate food supplies. The success of plan was greatly facilitated by favorable monsoons and of course strategic policy making. The Mahalanobis heavy and capital goods investment strategy formulated during the second five-year plan became the cornerstone of the five-year plans for so many years. The Nehru-Mahalanobis model was based on long-term development goals. It was commended for the rise in saving and investment rates, the setting up of economic and physical infrastructure like dams, irrigation projects, transportation and communication, the modern temples of development in the country and the considerable expansion of the capital goods sector via the dominant role of public sector. However, it faced criticism for inadequate emphasis on agriculture, small scale, village and cottage industries, and growing unemployment, inequality and also the frequent trade deficits and rising prices. The third plan suffered on account of severe famine and also the two wars. There was a major impact on flow of foreign aid, and this had severe impact on the plans. The fourth plan aimed to achieve an economic growth rate of 5.5% and self-reliance. The fourth plan could not achieve the targets on account of India-Pakistan War of 1971. The international crisis of oil in 1973, which led to huge price rises. The fifth plan achieved a GDP growth rate of 5.5%. It also saw economic crisis in the form of high inflation and escalating cost. The sixth plan was successful in terms of growth rate and overall development, but severe famines during 1984-85 led to fall in production of food grains. The seventh plan was a great success as the Indian economy achieved a growth rate of 6% as against the target of 5%. The average GDP growth rate in the 80s was 5.8% in comparison to the average of 3.5% in the previous plans. Let us now have a glance of growth rates, which was the target, and the actual accomplishments of different 5-year plans as shown in the table. In the first 5-year plan, that is 1951 to 1956, the target growth rate was 2.1% and the actual was 3.6%. In the second 5-year plan, that is 1956 to 61, the target was 4.5 and actual was 4.2. Third 5-year plan, that is 61 to 66, target was 5.6 and actual was only 2.7. 3 annual plans, 1966, 1969, the target nil, actual 3.7%. Fourth 5-year plan, 1969 to 1974, the target was 5.7%, the actual was only 2.1%. Fifth 5-year plan, that is 1974 to 79, target 4.4, actual 4.8. Annual plans 1979 to 80, there was no target and no actual. Sixth 5-year plan 1980 to 85, target 5.2%, actual 5.5%. Seventh 5-year plan 1985 to 90, target was 5.0 and the actual was 6.0. Annual plans from 1990 to 1992, the actual was 2.6%. Eighth 5-year plan from 1992 to 1997, the target was 5.6 and the actual was 6.7%. Ninth 5-year plan 1997 to 2002, target 6.5, actual 5.4%. 10th 5-year plan 2002 to 2007, target was 8% and the actual 7.8%. 11th 5-year plan from 2007 to 2012, target was 9% and the actual 8% only. Source: Economic Survey of different years. Let us now recapitulate what we have studied so far. The first phase of planning refers to the period from 1951 to 1990. The second phase starts with the 1990s, which heralded the onset of liberalization, privatization and globalization phase. The first 5-year plan's main objective was to correct the imbalances created in the economy on account of the World War II, that is 1937 to 1945, and the partition of country in 1947. There was a major food crisis in the country as a fallout of partition, and thus the first 5-year plan decided to devote large amount of public sector investment towards agriculture and irrigation facilities. The second 5-year plan was a turning point in the history of the industrialization of India. The focus of plans turned to the heavy and capital goods industry. The second 5-year planning model is also known as the Mahalanobis model. The basic idea was that economic development has been generally associated with industrial expansion, as was evidently shown by the advanced Western countries. The third 5-year plan also continued with the Mahalanobis model of achieving growth through industrialization. This period saw the setting up of the huge steel plants, power plants, dams, heavy electrical and so on. The Mahalanobis model based planning definitely gave the country a high growth rate and rapid industrial development, but it fell short with regard to tackling the major problems of poverty, unemployment and inequality. It neglected the possibility of export-led growth. Further setbacks came in form of 2 consecutive droughts in 1966 and 67 and 2 wars in 1962 and 1965. The country faced severe challenges and subsequent fall in GDP growth rate. However, India learned a lesson out of these crises and realized the weaknesses in the existing development strategies, that is the neglect of agriculture and also excessive dependence on foreign aid. Consequently, the strategy of planning was revised and greater stress on technological development in agriculture and also the need for self-reliance, that is reducing dependence on foreign countries, was prioritized in subsequent plans. The fourth 5-year plan laid stress on the objective of self-reliance and also was the phase of Green Revolution, heralding a new chapter in the history of agriculture in India. Though there were annual plans from 1966 to 1969 for 3 years, the fourth plan 1969 to 74 tried to consolidate the position on food front and by laying the foundation for future export potentialities. The fifth 5-year plan 1974 to 79 was essentially a shift from earlier strategy of only growth to growth with social justice or growth with redistribution. The first 3 plans had focused on growth in capital, let us, with the belief that the increase in growth rate would have a trickle down effect, and in the long run even the poorest of the poor would gain. However, nothing of this sort happened even after so many years of planning. Thus, a need to re-strategize was the need of the hour. The eradication of poverty through various anti-poverty programs was launched to achieve the objective of poverty eradication. The period 1979 to 1980 was again a period of annual plans. The sixth plan was to start in 1979 but could not due to the fall of Janata government. The sixth plan was set up in 1980 after the setting up of the new government by Mrs. Indira Gandhi. The sixth plan continued with focus on poverty eradication. The seventh plan, that is 1985 to 1990, was introduced after the country had enjoyed a GDP growth rate of 5.4% during the sixth plan. The seventh plan focus was on productivity enhancing measures and also on energy efficiency goals. The plan emphasized on policies and programs which would lead to an increase in food grains production, increased employment opportunities and productivity. There was a shift from massive investment in new industries to productivity and efficiency enhancing measures in the existing ones. Several projects emphasizing on energy requirements were taken up.